All right, so today I am joined by Brock McGillis, one of the first openly gay hockey players. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, Brock, let me begin by asking, how excited are you to embark on your US tour of the Shiftmakers Tour?
I'm now almost halfway completed in the US.
Okay, have you? Okay, I didn't know. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure when it started.
I was very excited to get into the US, which seems weird based off the current political climate. But what I really liked about it is I started off in Seattle and then I went to California. So the temperatures were much better than what I'm experiencing in Canada.
Mm,
Uh, or like now that I'm heading on the East Coast, although it's getting warmer.
yeah,
But
spring's coming.
yes, exactly. But it's honestly been awesome.
Good, good. So you're visiting hockey teams and organizations across the country, challenging homophobia, fostering inclusion, and inspiring the next generation of athletes. What initially inspired the Shiftmakers Tour, and what do you ultimately hope young athletes take away from your visits?
So it's interesting. I think what um, fostered shift maker stories that I'm a bit of a masochist. And people would look at me and say, "You can't be everywhere." Like, "Oh, it's great what you're doing, but you just can't be everywhere."
Mm,
And I found it so incredibly dismissive to the work that it was almost like an F you.
yeah,
I'm going to go everywhere because you're dismissing what I'm doing. And it sort of fueled me, which is odd, but also incredible. So I started out a couple years ago with this crazy idea, and I went to some corporates in Canada, and they jumped on board.
nice.
And I said, "Oh, I guess I'm doing this." And last year, I went to 103 teams in 100 days across Canada, and this year, in Canada, I went to, oh gosh, I think it was over 140 in about 85 days, 27 cities coast to coast.
Wow.
And now we're in the US. I think we're going to be one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 to 12 cities across the US this year. And sort of expand the same way we did in Canada last year. And the premise was like when I first started talking, it was my life and
Hmm.
my story. But that's kind of now secondary, which I really appreciate. And it's using my story as a catalyst to evoke emotion and thought to then have people engage in the real stuff, the important stuff, becoming a shift maker. And when I retired from playing, I was working with athletes, and I didn't know that they all knew I was gay because I stayed closeted publicly out of fear that if they knew, they wouldn't want to work with me.
Hmm.
And I came to find out they all knew. And I thought, well, I started to notice they'd apologize anytime to say something homophobic, and I'd be like, okay, cool, maybe they just like me. They see me as one of the guys.
Hmm.
We go on the ice and I chirp them. I out bench press all of them, and that's really the most important part of the story. So make sure this ends up in there. Um, but maybe the older players go to bars, younger players go to school. They all go to the rink and they're using slurs and calling people names, regardless race, gender, sexuality, etc.
Hmm.
And I didn't know. One day I wasn't there. I had a sprint coach working with some athletes on a track, and at the end of a 2 hour workout, he told them they had 10 more sprints. And a younger player.
You there? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
No, I can. Yes.
Okay. A younger player looked at the sprint coach and said, "We don't say that here. Give me 50 push-ups."
Mm,
And or an older player said that to a younger player when a younger player said that's okay when he told them they had to do 10 more sprints. And that became something all my athletes adopted amongst themselves to hold each other accountable as push-ups. And then they started taking it with them, using their influence as athletes to take it with them everywhere they went. Before you knew it, people I didn't even know were doing push-ups. And but that guy that day, that small little action of looking at a friend and saying, "We don't say that here. Give me 50 push-ups."
hmm.
That created a shift in all my athletes. That created a shift in other people. That created a shift in me and realized the impacts I could have.
Yeah.
because of that guy came out, because of that guy started doing the work I do now, because of that guy, thousands of people have come to me over the years who have been struggling, and a lot of the time not even LGBTQ plus related things, and I've been able to help them get support. That guy that day, his small little action, the ripple effect of it was that it saved lives.
Yeah.
He's a shift maker, so then I teach them how they can create shifts.
Hmm.
Humanizing issues, the environment we create, and breaking conformity are the three main ways. And we do some really cool stuff within it that's become incredibly powerful and pretty neat, and has really done an exceptional job of rallying people and fostering welcoming environments for everyone, whether it's a straight white kid or an LGBTQ plus kid or adult, or a person of color or a woman in a men's space, etc.
Hmm. That's amazing. Love it. And yeah, you're not just tackling homophobia, but you're also tackling racism and sexism in hockey as well. What connections do you see between these issues in the sport?
Well, what I try and tackle is I wouldn't even say that I'm tackling homophobia, racism, or sexism.
Okay.
I think what I'm trying to do is create inclusive environments and welcoming environments for every single person.
Okay.
I don't care if you're the straight white kid. I don't care if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, or you have a disability, or mental health struggles, or anything. You should be able to play sport.
Yeah.
You should be able to play hockey. And here's my thing with hockey is hockey players, especially at younger ages, but I think all the way through, we kind of eat each other alive. And if the straight white dudes are eating each other alive, what hope is there for a marginalized person?
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so we've actually started tackling that, is fostering. So what I do is I focus on three ways that we can create the shifts, and it's to humanize issues, which is all the things we're talking about. If you put a face to, racism in a room, it's gonna, if you put a person of color in a room, it's gonna change the way people talk about racism. Instead of some abstract theory, you have real life experience in there.
Mhm.
No different than me sharing my story and humanizing what it's like to be the impact of language, behaviors, and attitudes on a gay person in the space.
Yeah.
Um, from there, it's the environment we create, and I focus a lot on language.
Okay.
And that language, and this is to your question about the similarity, that language, direct language, calling somebody names,
Hmm.
is impactful, whether it's, bullying somebody, or, using racist slurs towards a person of color, or saying homophobic stuff towards somebody who you suspect is gay, or as a way to put them down, or using sexist language, etc. The indirect language, those off the cuff remarks like, oh, that's so gay. Laughter is a form of language. And I focus on laughter a lot. And I said, why do you laugh when somebody bullies somebody or says something offensive?
Hmm.
And what it comes down to, and this happens in corporate culture, right down to kids playing hockey, it's to fit in.
Okay.
I'm like, what if you didn't laugh and everyone else did? They're like, well, you'd be the next person targeted.
Hmm.
What happens if nobody laughed? It would stop. And I used to leave it there, but something changed about 2 months ago. And I said, so let me get this straight. In sport, and in hockey in particular, we call ourselves a family,
Hmm.
or brothers or sisters, or some analogy like that. You're laughing at things you don't find funny because you're afraid that your family is going to bully you. That's messed up.
Yeah.
And let's take it a step further and go, in sport, hockey, they're gladiators on ice. They're tough. They battle in the corner. They fight in front of the net. They're these, tough, rugged athletes. They're brave. They're courageous. Is that brave?
Hmm.
I don't think that's brave.
Yeah.
And then I talk about body language and then silence. And I share a story of a player who came to me who experienced anti-Semitism, a 13-year-old boy, and some of his teammates drew swastikas on his hotel mirror.
Oh, wow.
And at a tournament, and he comes up to me and he goes, Brock, this happened last weekend. You inspired me to tell them how it made me feel.
Hmm.
I said, you want to go back in and talk to them? He's like, yeah. They were gone at this point, but I worked with him and his mom and went to his next practice. And he got to humanize, he got to put a face to the impact of that as a Jewish kid.
Yeah.
I got to reinforce language. Three players did it, but seven stood around and watched.
Hmm.
Well, silence, the silence in that moment is so impactful because if media gets that story, they're not going to differentiate between three who did and the seven who watched. They're going to say 10 players were in a room and this happened. You know, um, it's easy to stay silent, though. It's safe to stay silent. You won't be the next person targeted if you stay silent. But is that brave? Does that show courage?
Wow.
And then the third way is breaking conformity. They dress same, talk the same, walk the same. There's four things you can talk about in a guy's hockey locker room. It's women, video games, partying, sports, music, as long as it's rap or country.
Mm.
I'm like, you call yourselves a family? I'm like, tell me something you typically wouldn't tell your teammate about yourself. And I'm like, listen, you all have two answers in your head right now. You have the surface level BS answer. I love cooking. I make grilled cheese.
Mm.
Cool. I said, or you have the brave one. I'll accept either one, but you and I will both know which one you gave me. The one you're scared to give and share.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I did that, I've had at least 10, 15 kids openly start talking about how they're in silently struggling with their mental health
Mm.
at different levels across North America. And nobody knows to the magnitude they're struggling. And now people do, and they're able to get support.
Yeah.
I had one player stand up and say, I have a stutter, and you all make fun of me to the point that I don't want to talk in public.
Mm.
I had an Indigenous kid stand up and say, I pretend I'm okay with the jokes, but I hate them. And then there's happened to be another Indigenous kid in the room on a different team, and he goes, I feel the exact same way.
Mm.
I had a black player at a different session say the exact same thing. So that was a long-winded way of saying this has become for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, and the more they open up and share, the more that we can create. I've sort of socially re-engineered the way they look at toughness.
Mm-hmm.
That it's brave, it's tough to share.
Yeah.
Um, and also created a psychologically safe space where they can. And because of that, it's foster better environments for everyone on the team.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Love it. That's serious. That's so fantastic. And when you came out in 2016, correct?
Mhm.
Which which you made history as the first openly gay men's professional hockey player. So, what motivated you to come out publicly?
That hockey player that I worked with,
Okay.
he was a catalyst. Him doing that, me seeing the impact. A few other things. A hockey association wouldn't let my businesses work with their team. At the time, I was running hockey businesses, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I wasn't allowed to work with their teams, and they wouldn't give a reason why. However, um, at that point, I knew that they were all finding out about my sexuality,
Yeah.
and I got kicked off a couple of coaching staffs when coaches found out. Some friends that I was volunteering my time with, and then right after that season, there was the massacre at Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's always been like the reality for straight people. And I even talk about this in my sessions is, I'll look at if I'm at a corporate, I'll ask, somebody if they're, straight and have I usually focus on men when I talk about this only because I think women in public have still some fears and things about being sexually harassed and sexually
Mm-hmm.
assaulted because it happens to them.
Yeah.
But with men, I'm like, if you're walking down the street holding your wife's hand, do you worry about anything? Do you worry about being verbally harassed,
Mm.
physically assaulted, killed?
Yeah.
The reality is for, the LGBTQ plus community, that still is a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And those gay bars, those nightclubs are safe spaces, those queer spaces are safe spaces for the community to go and love who they love, no different than a straight person can just do it walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And that was ripped away from us that night.
Yeah.
That could have been me and my friends in Toronto. And right after that, I had a friend who was running a major LGBTQ plus organization. I'm not going to mention which one, but he ended up on a terrorist hit list about a week later.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was making a crude joke because Pulse at the time, different groups were taking credit, but he wasn't. And he was hosting a charity event, and he's called me and said, "I don't think you should come." And then he told me it's because he was on this list. And I said, "Well, are you going?" He said, "Yeah, I have to." And I went with him. And I was watching, we had undercover security and officers around us. I was watching people get frisked and check for weapons on the way in. And metal detector wands out at the door. And I thought, is this seriously happening in Toronto, in Canada in 2016? And I got angry.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it. I went, well, you can sit here and be angry, or you can do something about it. I went home that night and slept on it. And the next day I called a friend of mine who's a journalist and I said, I'm coming out.
Hmm.
And those three main incidents plus that hockey player were really the catalyst coming out publicly.
Yeah. Gotcha. And hockey culture has been known for its toughness and traditional values for so long. And so, outside of shift makers, which is what you're doing, do you think hockey overall is making meaningful progress towards inclusivity, or do you believe there's still a very long way to go?
Here's what I'll say about hockey. I think hockey has one of the worst cultures in sport
Okay.
in the sense of the language and behaviors. Um, I mean, all the big four do, but the stuff you hear in the hockey locker rooms, the words are probably the worst. But what I will say is, I do believe they would be the most supportive of a gay teammate.
Okay.
So it's kind of an oxymoron and it's sort of contradictory, and but it literally, I think there's that whole sense of family, that whole dynamic that would lead them to being incredibly supportive,
Okay.
more so than many other sports.
Hmm. So, how did your teammates react when you came out?
Well, I'd retired. I'd been retired at that point. I had a lot reach out to me,
Okay.
a lot of former teammates, a lot of people that I grew up with in sport, and um, like a lot of it was like first like sort of congratulating me and whatnot, and telling me, sending all those nice platitudes,
Hmm.
but also like apologizing if they ever said something that offended me or bothered me. And for me, it didn't really. I said the same stuff. I held no resentment towards anyone for the words they said.
Hmm.
It did impact me negatively. I self-harmed. I drank heavy. It almost killed me. It definitely killed my career.
Yeah.
But I don't hold them responsible. I mean, they don't know any better, and we're all products of an environment. And if the environment tells you that this is the way to act, you're going to act that way.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there was a lot of empathy and remorse,
Hmm.
which was nice, but it also told me like I'd love to set this up so that in the future nobody has to send those messages.
Hmm. Definitely. Well, what is the best advice you can give to a young LGBTQ plus athlete who feels isolated in their sport?
Reach out.
To reach out.
Yeah, I think we feel isolated because we think we're the only ones going through it or who has ever gone through it.
Hmm.
And it's not the case. There's so many of us. Some are out, some are not. Sometimes we live in the shadows,
Hmm.
but we exist. There's people who will answer your DMs. I work with, I've people messaging me daily.
Hmm.
There are people there who will support you, who will help you through it, who will be there to help guide you through the positive, the negative, the ups and the downs. And um, reach out. But beyond that, internally, I think we have a tendency to look for acceptance. And Stop. Stop looking for acceptance from other people. It creates a hierarchy that they're above you.
Yeah.
Nobody can accept you but you.
Hmm.
And then when you accept yourself, and this sounds kind of cliche, but I truly believe it, you need to learn to love who you are.
Definitely. Hmm.
I love being a gay man. I love the culture. I love queer history. Um, I love that I see the world through a different lens than other people in my world because of my different lived experiences.
Yeah.
Embrace and love yourself. And when you love yourself unconditionally, you won't care what anyone else thinks of you.
Yeah.
And there's power in that. It'll take so many weights off your shoulders, and then you'll run faster, swim faster, you'll jump higher, you'll lift heavier, you'll be the best version of yourself because you're not weighing yourself down.
Hmm. Definitely. Definitely. Well, what are some other future goals you hope to accomplish with your career and platform?
Oh goodness. Well, I want to turn the tours are chaos. They're absolute madness. I don't sleep for 3, 4 months on end. The planning going into it is absurd. And now that I'm doing one in each country in North America as well, while we have two countries in North America, uh, I want to turn it into a reality show.
Okay.
I want to do a book, both at some point on my life and also on the powerful stories from the tour
Okay.
and from traveling around North America. And so those are two big things right now. I think at some point, either a movie or a series on kind of being that gay athlete, and struggling and hiding and everything that's come since
Hmm.
could be pretty powerful as well. So I want to venture more into the TV, radio type space and continue to increase my voice. It's wonderful and it's great to do these tours and to travel around, but to be able to reach masses
Hmm.
and share and engage. And I found a way to share and engage that I think, like I'll have some of the most staunch Republicans in tears in a room,
Mm.
where I've been able to reach masses, regardless of political affiliation, regardless how they feel about gender, sexuality, etc., and and sort of meet them where they're at and call them in and at least have them critically think. And to me, we're not doing that enough,
Yeah.
and I think we have to do a little more of that. So that's sort of my goal, and I also want to have some fun. A lot of my work's pretty heavy.
Hmm.
It's like Ted Lasso meets Euphoria. And it really is like I have people coming to me that are, self-harming or trying to die by suicide and
Yeah.
different things. And to do maybe some lighter stuff and some fun stuff too could be pretty cool. And just sort of make the dark stuff not feel as heavy.
Hmm. Hmm. Fantastic. Well, how can one stay up to date with you the best?
You can follow me on social media, particularly on Instagram, Brock McGillis 33, and TikTok, same Brock McGillis 33.
Okay. And is that how one can stay up to date with the Shiftmakers tour as well?
Yeah, I post there. I post my day in the life videos, well, gay in the life videos on Instagram and TikTok daily with the tour. And we have some pretty cool stuff from the players and what they're saying about it that's going to come out soon. So it'll be really neat and cool and exciting. So
All right. Fantastic.
all
Well, then before we wrap up, are there any other upcoming projects or anything else you'd like to mention or plug at this time?
No, right now it's just touring. I get to finish that and get ready for year 3 in Canada and year 2 in the US and get those started by end of August, early September. So we're just planning those out and then hopefully by that point we'll have some partners for um, a reality series and different things.
All right. Fantastic.